What can we learn about innovation from the company Nvidia? Well, after this video, you have the practical insights and ideas to boost the innovation power of your own company or organization. Short story. When I was young, me and my brother were playing games on the computer. And it's the 90s, so think of Prince of Persia or Wolfenstein 3D. And I never knew, of course I was also young, but I never knew that the graphics cards for playing these games would be the basis for the AI revolution and the enormous success of the company called Nvidia. Comment, like and subscribe. Do you have a remark or a question? Please let me know. And also give me a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Question for you. Are you or were you a vivid gamer? If so, drop a line below, leave a remark. What was your favorite game, or what is currently your favorite game? Because the graphics card for games was where it all started for the company of Nvidia. My name is Joosten. I'm a futurist, a keynote speaker and an innovation expert. And my theme is how to become future-proof. So what's heading our way? Think of AI or other developments. And what can we do to benefit from these developments? And if you want to hire me, please send me a message. Well, this topic is related to futures research and innovation. So if you want to know how to do futures research or strategic foresight, to look at these technological trends, look on my YouTube channel for futures research. And if you want to know what is innovation, well, and what are the steps in my innovation model, look on my YouTube channel for innovation model. So what are the reasons that the company Nvidia is such an innovative company? Well, after this part, you know the secrets to this success and also some practical advice to use these insights also in your own organization. So let's look at my innovation model, and the second step is inventarization. So the question is, how can you spot these early signals of change? Well, this is a telling quote from the book The Nvidia Way by Tai Kim. When demand for generative AI exploded in 2023, Nvidia was the only hardware manufacturer ready to fully support it. And it was ready only because it was able to spot the early signals, productize them in the form of hardware and software acceleration features, and insert those features into a line of chips that was only months away from arriving on the open market. So this quote is something that Nvidia is really stellar at, spotting these early signals. And that led in this case to market dominance in those massive AI chips that are the basis on the AI revolution, large language models, these data centers. So if you're watching this video as an executive or a manager, how do you spot these early signals? So I want to share 3 practical ideas from Nvidia. And the first one is the top 5 emails. So every week, employees, especially those in leadership or specialized roles, they send a brief email with 5 things to their manager and also to Joosten Wang, the co-founder and currently the CEO, with the most important things that they are working on, the challenges they are facing or the insights they had gathered. And in this article in Bloomberg, it stated that Joosten Wang receives about 100 of these emails directly. And the main benefit, he states, is that by this method you bypass hierarchy. It also enables a sort of alignment because a lot of people have the same information. And for me, that reminds me of the famous 6-page memo by Jeff Bezos of Amazon, where they use a memo before they start a meeting. At the beginning of a meeting, everybody reads that memo in silence. And Bezos states that these memos are read in silence, and in that way they serve as a better way to formulate ideas because you have to put them in writing instead of putting them in a PowerPoint. And he states it's really important because if you write it down, you really have to be clear about the arguments and the pros and the cons, and in a PowerPoint presentation you can sort of maybe wing it. So that also reminds me of the top 5 emails and the 6-page memo. So you write it down, be very brief and concise and clear. Well, the second element is a learning culture. And it's also stated that when you visit a trade show or a gaming event or an academic conference, Jensen Huang or other executives, they corner you and they say, so what did you learn? And I think that really hits the point that learning is correlated with innovation. And this is one example where they try to boost that innovation culture within the company by doing these things. Like if a person goes somewhere abroad, ask them, what did you learn? How can we apply that? And I think learning is really important concerning innovation. And it's also stated by Adam Grant, a scholar, where he states that organizations with a learning culture, they innovate faster and make fewer mistakes. And I think Nvidia really brings this point home. And the third thing to spot these early signals is related to collaboration. And one interesting thing that they did with the layout of the buildings, they have two main buildings, Endeavour and Voyager. If you know what's the basis of these names, but they the layout of these buildings, it stated that they encourage collaboration. So each building has fully open working space and wall-to-wall whiteboards in a dozen of conference rooms. So employees at every level are expected to use those whiteboards as much as possible. So you write things and maybe you're discussing that with a colleague, what you're writing on the whiteboards, and then maybe another colleague from another department walks by and then he or she can mingle in. So they really want to encourage collaboration with the layout of the buildings. And for me, that reminded me of the ideas of Steve Jobs, also with the layout of the Apple buildings and also way earlier with the Xerox PARC, where it's all about encouraging collaboration, encouraging serendipity, that people mingle together from other disciplines. In that way, you can also boost the innovation within your organization. So my main takeaway from this part is to spot these early signals. You can do three things. Try the top 5 emails. Also encourage a learning culture. And you can do that by asking people if they visit a conference, etc., to ask them, okay, what did you learn? And the third piece of advice is collaboration. And how can you boost the collaboration within your organization? And one way is also to look at the layout of the buildings where you are working in. So how can Nvidia stay ahead of the competition with new technological breakthroughs? Well, after this part, you know how Nvidia keeps the technological top position, illustrated with 3 examples, and also what you can learn from that. So again, look at my innovation model, and the first step is identification. And that has to do with focus and with strategy. And the strategy of Nvidia is to have and to keep a leading edge. And I think this is a telling quote by Jensen Huang, the co-founder and CEO. And this he stated at a talk at Stanford. When you are in the technology industry, if you're not reinventing yourself, you're slowly dying. So what are 3 examples of this reinvention? Well, the first one is CUDA. So in 2006, Nvidia made the most risky decision in its history, the creation of CUDA, and that stands for Compute Unified Device Architecture. And I will get back to the origin story because it's really amazing later. But the main idea of CUDA was that instead of forcing scientists to disguise their mathematics as graphics, Nvidia built a software layer and a hardware architecture that made the GPUs, so the graphical process units, programmable in standard C++ programming language. And at that time, Wall Street reacted destructively. Investors saw Nvidia burn billions of dollars in profit to serve an esoteric niche market of scientists and researchers. But that actually was not the case. It was really long-term thinking of the company at that time that paid off huge dividends later. But I will share that story in a bit. And the second example of that technological edge is that they also focus on fundamental research. So after a while, when Nvidia grew, the leadership team, they realized that relying on incremental innovation and engineering wasn't enough to sustain that long-term leadership. So they brought in Bill Daly to build a lab focused on fundamental research. So problems that do not have a commercial application in 5 or 10 years. But that actually paid off, because in already 3 years, it was stated that Nvidia research had transformed from a group that pursued speculative computing projects into a reliable source of new business opportunities for the company. In that way, they could manage to have both the incremental innovation, but also that fundamental improvements. In that way, they could stay ahead of their competition. And the third example is, okay, what's next? What's next for a company like Nvidia? Well, in early 2023, Jensen Huang was asked by a student to predict what will follow and build upon artificial intelligence. And Jensen Huang stated, there's no question, digital biology is going to be it. Well, that's also my area of expertise, the combination of artificial intelligence with biology and healthcare. And one recent example, I'm recording this video in 2026, is that Nvidia and Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical company, they announced the launch of the Co-Innovation AI Lab that will bring together a multidisciplinary team of scientists, AI researchers and engineers to address the hardest problems in drug discovery. So they will look at robotics and physical AI to accelerate and scale medicine discovery and production. So the combination of AI and biology. So this is my takeaway. Maybe you're watching this and you're thinking, well, that's easy for a company like Nvidia with these vast amounts of resources and their technological focus. But there's also another lesson. And the lesson is they focus. They're really strict in what they do and what they don't do. And this is telling quote, strategy is about the things you give up. That's Jensen Huang again. He states you sort through everything and you pick the most important thing and then do that and leave the other things aside. So if you have to take one thing away, not about the things they do to have the technological edge, but also they are really good at focusing in their strategy. So what's my favorite anecdote about innovation at Nvidia? Well, after this part, you know, great story and also what you can learn from this. So I explained CUDA, and this is the backstory. Around the mid-2000s, some physicists, computational scientists, and they started to hand-coding linear algebra and particle simulations on gaming CPUs. And those gaming CPUs were, of course, meant for another purpose, to game. But this community of scientific computing, they sort of hacked that system. And they did that because they saw a 10 till 100 times speed ups of their computing compared to the normal CPU codes. So, and this led to papers and demos where people were abusing these graphics APIs to do things like matrix multiplies, Monte Carlo analysis. So long before that hardware was officially for compute. So they were hacking their way to use these gaming GPUs for other means. But what's really inspiring is that Nvidia saw that strange grassroots use of what's happening within that community of scientists, and they responded by launching that CUDA, which I just explained. So in that way, they turned the hack of these scientists into a first-class programming model for scientific computing, and that snowballed into today's GPU-dominated supercomputing landscape. So my takeaway of this anecdote, where such a small development of hackers turned into a massive and profitable business for Nvidia, is that they saw that small community of researchers and they identified it as a weak signal, and then they also collaborated with these scientists to help them. So they were spotting these signals and they were working together in an ecosystem. So that's also my main lesson for you, is how can you spot these signals? And if so, how can you also collaborate with these users in an ecosystem to further develop your product, your service, or whatever kind of innovation? By the way, the resources for this video is the book I mentioned, but also a really astonishing podcast Acquired, where they have multiple hours about the Nvidia backstory. And also articles like I mentioned Bloomberg, Harvard Business Review, etc. So back to my story about computer games. It's, I think, a really great story how Nvidia turned from graphic cards for gamers to an AI chip mastodon. And yeah, the Nvidia story is also how they completely reinvented themselves a couple of times. And I think that's really an example of astonishing innovation power. So my question for you is, are you or were you a vivid gamer of computer games? And if so, drop a line, what is or was your favorite game? So thank you for watching. If you want to hire me for a keynote presentation, consultancy or webinar, please send me a message. Comment, like and subscribe. Do you have a remark or question? Please let me know. Give me thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Oké, hier gaan we dan. Wow, Prince of Persia. Wow, en dan gaat deze kunnen vallen, hè? Ah. Oef. Duurt wel even voordat hij weer opstaat. Nou, ik ben hier nog wel even zoet mee.